Hi, Tamara.
Hi.
Well, we have a bunch of stuff in common that we won't get into in this episode, but you found me on Instagram and we realized that we already knew each other
Yeah,
because we're
yeah.
both we our kids are at the same school. And it was like that was such a lucky coincidence.
Yeah, it's extra lucky because now we get to hang out like both outside of our kids' school and then at school events. We always schedule them so we can be together, which is super fun.
Yes. And so how much sobriety time do you have now? It's over
Um,
2 years.
just a little over 2 years. It was 2 years on January 2nd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So no January 1st for you.
No, I got wasted on January 1st.
Oh
So
my God, what happened? Had you thought on December 31st, had you thought I'm going to quit drinking for the new year, or was it just so happened that
well, in October of the year before, so what would that have been? 2022? Um, I I decided to stop drinking just to see how long I could do it. So a friend of mine had been sort of struggling and he was stopping. So I was like, let me just do this in solidarity and let's see how far it goes. And so, but I always knew we were going to Mexico for Christmas. And so I was like, there's no way I can't drink on vacation. Like that, there was no that made no sense in my brain that you could go on vacation and not drink.
I mean, what else would you do?
Yeah, exactly. Like talk to your family.
Stare
So,
at nature?
yeah, gross. So we touched down in Mexico. We got in the car that was taking us to our house that we rented, and they stopped at the grocery store, bought a bottle of tequila at the grocery store, and that was it. I was drinking for vacation. And
Oh, okay. Okay. So you did drink for somehow I thought this story was going another way. I thought you were going to
no,
be like, and then I
nope,
lasted through. Okay.
there was no moment of clarity because I always knew I was going to drink on vacation.
Right.
Like I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to have margaritas. I'm going to have a beer on the beach. And so I did. I drank for that vacation and I drank reasonably. Like I didn't get super drunk. Like I just, I had fun and my husband and I would have margaritas and it was nice. So then um, we went out for New Year's Eve, still perfectly reasonable, like had a couple drinks, but nothing crazy. And then on New Year's Day, my son had gone on a trip over that weekend. And on New Year's Day, I just decided it was a good idea to drink champagne and drink tequila both for the better part of the day. And by the time my son got home, I was so drunk and I kept asking him the same question over and over. And he'd go, Mom, you already asked me that. And I went into his room to talk to him and I went to sit down on the bed and I slipped. Like I
Oh,
didn't, yeah, in front of my teenage son. Um, I'm gonna cry thinking about it. I don't think I've ever told this story before. Um, and so I woke up the next day full of shame, absolute shame and regret. And I knew that I didn't want to drink anymore. And that was it. That was the last time.
wow. That is something that I feel resonates with me and also I think will resonate with a lot of people. Sometimes it just, you have to have one of those moments. I
Yeah.
personally think if we're really going to be sober because we feel like we have a problem, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
feel like people that don't have this thing, this ism,
Mhm.
can just stop drinking because they go,
Yeah.
oh, I got a weird diagnosis, health diagnosis, and
Hmm.
it's not good for me. But
Hmm.
when you are a person with addiction, it really seems to take some kind of, but was there, I want to know, just take me all the way back to your teenage, start at the
Okay.
beginning.
Um, so I don't remember the first time I tried alcohol. I think I was probably, I mean, I grew up in the 70s. So like my parents were like drinking gin and tonics like it was water. And I do remember like I would sometimes try to take a sip of them because it looked like 7 Up and we
Mm-hmm.
never had soda. So I would take a sip and I would be like, oh, this is gross. I don't like it. Um, but I remember the first time I got really drunk and threw up. I was at a party with some people that were older than me. I was probably about 14. And I drank Bartles and James wine coolers and peach schnapps.
Because of course you did.
Why wouldn't I? And just saying that right now, my stomach is churning. And so, of course, I got violently ill, but that was in no way a deterrent. I just kept going and spent my high school years drinking like keg beer and Boone's Farm.
Oh, you're bringing me back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Me and my friend, we would each get a bottle of like tickled pink or Strawberry Hill. Is that what it
Yeah,
was called?
Strawberry Hill. Yeah.
And we'd each have a bottle and we'd put a straw in it, and then we would just drink the whole thing like it was a big gulp.
How would you get it? Do you remember?
Yeah, we would hang out in front of liquor stores and just ask
Same.
older people to buy it for us, and they always would.
They would.
No one batted an eye.
It's so funny because can you imagine like if kids were standing in front of a liquor store
No.
now just being like, sure, 14-year-old, I'll buy you some wine. No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I wonder if kids even do it or if they like hang out in front of dispensaries like to get gummies. Wouldn't
Oh.
you think? Because they all seem to have them.
Yeah, I remember that my daughter went to a party when she was 14. Me, like, yeah, I don't think she was 15 yet. And a bunch of the kids were drinking. It was at a friend's house, and my
Hmm.
friend told me a bunch of these kids were sneaking in out bottles of alcohol in backpacks. And that was my first thought. Where are they getting it?
Yeah. Yeah.
From their
Well, I'm
parents' house?
maybe, maybe they're stealing from their parents, but I know that when I was in high school, parents were pretty loose about like we would go to parties at people's houses and there would be kegs there and you would pay $5 and get a solo cup and then you could just have as much like warm disgusting keg beer as you wanted and like who was buying these kegs like I think it was the parents and they were like yeah let's just have a free for all in our backyard and then who knows how we got home like did our
I've
parents
thought
pick us
about it.
up
I don't
right
think so. I think older kids drove
and they were
and then you'd
probably
all pile.
drunk.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating that we lived.
I know. So, okay, so you're a teenager. What about your parents? Did they drink too much?
Yeah. So my dad, at some point when I was a teenager, and this was after my parents had split up, my dad just stopped drinking. And it wasn't something we talked about. He didn't go to AA or anything like that. He just stopped drinking. And we just all knew that, like, even if there was wine served at dinner, my dad was going to have a Diet Coke. My mom got sober when, gosh, probably in my late teens. Um, she got sober and she's been sober for over 20 years. Um,
So much later than your dad, though?
yeah, um, I'm trying to remember, but yeah, it was my parents had split. My parents split when I was around 13. So, yeah, my mom got sober probably several years after that. But to her credit, she has worked her program and she is like a diehard member of AA. Her closest friends, her community is that AA community, and she loves her sobriety. So that's an inspiration.
Wow, that is pretty cool.
Hmm.
But when you were young, do you remember your parents being drunk?
I don't really. I don't really because I don't know that I knew the difference. You
It's
know what I
just
mean?
interesting, yeah, because I'm thinking about like your feelings about being drunk in front of your kid.
Hmm.
And I knew that I didn't want to be drunk in front of my kids. It was like a big deal to me.
Hmm.
But I didn't have member like my mother and stepfather, who I was raised by, did not have drinking issues. Never
Hmm.
seen either of them drunk.
Hmm.
The only thing I can equate it to is that my biological father would seem really messed up on pills a lot, and I
Uh-huh.
really didn't like it. Like if he was
Yeah.
slurring his words, I just remember being so grossed out by that.
Hmm.
And I just never wanted to be in front of my kids, slurring my words or
Yeah.
or having them be scared of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I get that. I don't think I had that experience with my parents, at least not that I can remember. And I remember before my mom got sober. So maybe I was a little older when she got sober because I would drink wine with her.
Oh, okay.
And so if she was slurring, I probably was too, so I didn't notice. But there was always a box of wine in our refrigerator.
Interesting. Yeah.
Hmm.
The box of wine is a good kind of invention because you don't really know how much you've had.
Yeah,
It doesn't shame you the way like a bottle does, where you can see like, oh my God, I drank almost all that whole bottle.
yeah,
A box, I don't know, could be gone in an hour, could be gone in like a day.
yeah.
We
It's the
don't know.
gift that keeps on giving. You just pull that tap, and if it still comes out, you're good.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Little white Zinfandel. It's so gross.
Okay, so you're a teenager, you're drinking. Are you having times where it's out of control?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't think it got out of control until I was much older. I drank when I was in college, and I think that affected me because I would be hungover and I wouldn't go to class, or I would go to class and they'd be taking a test that I didn't know was happening. Um, and that to me was sort of a like not a wake up call. It wasn't a wake up call at all. It was just like college is not for me. This is not the path.
That was your takeaway. Not I drinking is not for me. Well, I guess
Nope.
college isn't for me.
It
I
just
don't know.
didn't work out.
I'm gonna have to keep track of shit like tests. It's
Who
getting
could
in the
do
way of my
that?
drinking.
Yeah, 100%. So I kept going to frat parties. I just wasn't in college.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I would always so my best friend would, I would go to these frat parties with her. Everybody would be really drunk, but somehow she always had her wits about her. And so just when I was about to be date raped, she would burst into a room and be like, Tamara, come on, you're coming with me. And when I drink, I just get chatty and I'll talk to anybody and I have no idea what their intentions are. I just think, oh, we're having a nice conversation. And
Same. I'm exactly the same way. Yeah.
yeah, and sober, I'm not like that. I'm, well, maybe I'm more like that now, but sober, Anne Leary says something. Uh, she says, I was born 3 drinks shy of normal.
Mm-hmm.
And that has always resonated with me. I always felt like, yeah, same. Like I felt better and I felt capable of being around people if I had had a few drinks.
Yeah, I feel like that too, but I don't really have social anxiety. So it's not quite that. It's just that the idea of making small talk, I just am so bored easily.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of an
Yeah.
ADHD thing too, It's just like
Uh-huh.
I have trouble. Well, I used to. I'm saying obviously not now. I've been sober a long time, but I just remember that feeling of like, well, drinking just makes it easier to stay interested in
Oh,
conversations I don't care about.
yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it's funny because I think I thought I had social anxiety, and probably I did when I was younger. But before I got sober, if I was getting ready to go to a party, I would feel so anxious that I would drink while I was getting ready. I'd have like a little like glass of tequila, and I would sip on that glass of tequila. And by the time I got to the party, I was pretty much drunk. And then I would continue to drink. And the interesting thing is, when I stopped drinking, I realized that I didn't feel socially anxious. It had more to do with the alcohol that was making me feel that way. And so I was trying to quell that anxiousness with more alcohol, which of course is a vicious cycle.
You mean like you felt anxious about the fact that you were drinking?
No, I think because I was a daily drinker, I was always in this anxiety cycle. Like
Right. I
it's
see
just
what you're saying.
because of what alcohol does to your brain,
Right.
you're constantly in this cycle of chasing dopamine, and then it depletes, and then you feel anxious. And so to get rid of the anxiety, you drink more alcohol, and it just keeps going. So when I stopped drinking, I didn't have that anymore. Like I didn't feel a need to get rid of the anxiety because I didn't have it. And then once I realized that I could go to a party and I could talk to people and I could have a great time without alcohol, and that I could sleep through the night, not wake up at 3 a.m. full of anxiety, wondering what I did or said to embarrass myself.
Right.
Um, that to me was like the most freeing thing. And now I can't imagine going to a party and having a drink. Like being around people and having my wits about me is the greatest thing.
Yeah. So, okay, so take me back though. So you're get out of your teenage years, college, drop out of college, then you start getting into acting. I
Mhm.
want to hear about your battles with other mental stuff and how alcohol mention it all.
Okay. So I started acting, and that was, there's something about when you're all together and you're like creating this thing, especially in theater. I did a lot of theater. And so, like, after a show, you're so high that you continue the party. You just keep going and you drink and drink and drink. And then the next day you get up and do it all over again. What I didn't know during this time is that I had undiagnosed bipolar disorder. So I was self-medicating with alcohol. Um, and the thing is, I'd go through these very, very deep, dark depressions. And I knew then that I shouldn't drink. So I didn't ever drink when I was depressed because somehow my brain knew enough to tell me that that would only make things way, way worse. But when I was manic, or even in between mania and depression, I drank a lot because I think my anxiety ran so high that I was just medicating that with alcohol just to get myself to a level of calm. Um,
But you didn't know what that was at the time.
no, I didn't know what it was, and I had been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and so I was taking medication for that, which for a person with bipolar disorder, it actually makes everything way worse. It triggers mania.
I've heard that.
Yeah. So I
For all the
eventually,
doctors out there,
yeah.
stop just putting people on stuff, right? Paxil especially for people that
Mm-hmm.
are depressed. I have other bipolar friends this has happened to.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common. And generally, because people don't go to the psychiatrist when they're manic, because why would you? Like
Right.
you think that you're like so creative and you're so like you're making a difference in the world. So you keep that to yourself. But when you're depressed, you need somebody to help you out of it
Right.
because it's a horrible, horrible feeling. So they give you antidepressants. Um,
How was that affecting your acting too? Because around this time, I'm assuming you were starting to get jobs, and then would you ever be too depressed to work? Or what happened?
I was never too depressed to work. Generally, the depression would sort of come in between jobs. Um, so largely, I was okay. I could get jobs, I could do jobs, and I was okay in that. But then I just remember being like, oh, I'm an insomniac. I have times where I don't sleep for 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
And I just thought, oh, I have trouble sleeping. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that I was manic. Um, but eventually I got to a point where I stopped being a good actor. It all caught up with me. And the combination of the mental illness and the alcohol, what made it impossible for me to do my work.
Did you ever drink on set Or, did you ever get too drunk to and embarrass yourself?
No, I never drank when I was working. Um, but I drank plenty after.
Hmm.
So there were definitely days when I showed up to work hungover, and you can't do your best work when you feel like that. And also, it makes the makeup artist's job really hard because you look like shit. So they have to put a lot more makeup on you and spend a lot more time dealing with you being the asshole that comes to work hungover.
And would you try to say like, "Oh, I just had really bad insomnia last night," and
Yeah, or I would say that like some terrible thing happened, so I got drunk. Like I didn't mean
oh,
to, but
okay.
this thing happened, so I drank too much, or
Right. Did you ever go out with your coworkers? Because this is, I might be projecting, but
mhm.
did you ever go out with coworkers and then you're the only one that got really drunk? And people were like, wow, Tamara, you sure enjoyed yourself last night.
Yeah.
Or is that
Yeah,
just a Stephanie thing?
no, I think most of my friends back then, or even my friends now, everybody drinks. Like that it's a big drinking community. Um, but I think it was more I felt that way. I knew that I had embarrassed myself. I knew that I got too drunk. And for me, like I'm a tiny person. I'm 5'2", I weigh 100 pounds, and I'm matching people drink for drink. And so I'm gonna get way more drunk way faster than most other people. And I think, and I don't know if this is true, but I think when you have a problem with alcohol, it affects you it affects you more. And I don't even know if that's science, but I feel like it just wasn't a good match. Me and alcohol was not a good match
But you tried to make it work for a long time. I'm
for a
I'm
very
so
long
curious
time.
if you ever early on before you realized you needed to quit, if you were like, mother alcoholic, father alcoholic, I
Mhm.
definitely drink too much. Or if you were just like, nope, I'm gonna make this work.
I think I had moments where I thought, am I an alcoholic? Do I have a problem? And then I would just have a drink, you know?
Right.
And I think when you're in that place, at least for me, I was very judgmental about other people's drinking. And I would read a lot of literature about people that had drinking problems, which maybe that should have been like a red flag for me. Like, why are you seeking out this literature if you don't have a problem? But when I read those books, I would go, oh, I'm not that bad. They're way worse than I was. I must be fine. I haven't done anything that terrible. So it just helped me justify continuing drinking.
Did you read Carolyn Knapp's book, Drinking a Love
A love
Story?
story, yeah.
Yeah. I remember reading that book a long time ago before I ever thought that I had a drinking problem. Well, before I ever consciously
Right.
was aware that I had a drinking problem. And I remember reading her book and thinking, wow, she was so bad. That was some
Mm-hmm.
bad alcoholism. I would think, oh, every day after work, she's like in a bar, she's drinking by herself. And later, way later, after I was sober and read that book, I was like, oh, she didn't really drink that much.
Yeah, yeah, she
I was
wasn't so
like,
bad.
no, did
Yeah.
not seem that as bad to me at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really, when I think back, because of course I never really thought I had a terrible problem, but when I think back on my behavior or about like the scary situations that I got myself into, like I feel very fortunate that I'm here today, that I'm in this place today.
Right. So you decide to quit acting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? It just
Um,
because that was kind of your life.
it was my life. It
So
was
you
my
must have,
career. It was how I made my living. Um, yeah, I decided to quit. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder um a
so at
few
this point,
years.
at this point you're married.
I'm married and I have my son. My son was about 5 or 6
Okay.
when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So up until that
Did you chalk
time,
any of that up to postpartum? because I feel like I had a lot of anxiety postpartum, and like, did it trigger anything? I feel like for a lot of women,
I don't know that it triggered anything for me. I definitely had postpartum issues for sure. Um, but I think that my bipolar disorder was something that had probably been going on since I was a teenager.
right? But your
Um,
husband would mention it to you,
he wouldn't really mention it to me until after the diagnosis, and I think we both sort of breathed a sigh of relief when the diagnosis happened, because one of the first things he said to me was, okay, so when you tell me that we have to re-landscape the entire backyard and it has to happen now, am I allowed to say, can we just put a pause on that for a minute? And I was like, yes, we can. And I realized how difficult I had made his life for a really long time. Um,
tell me about the diagnosis because I remember you telling me on a different podcast we did about what your intention of going to the doctor.
yeah, so I I went to see a psychiatrist because I was taking, I think, Zoloft for depression. And I went to see a psychiatrist because I felt like I I wanted to have more sex with my husband, but I didn't feel like it. Like I didn't have a libido. And so I
Right.
thought that the antidepressants were affecting that. And I went to her office and I talked to her a bit about it. And she said, has anyone ever suggested to you that you might be bipolar? And I said, no. And she said, okay, I'm not super concerned about your sex life with your husband. Like, basically, I think we have bigger fish to fry here.
Uh-huh.
And so she had me go home and take this test that was like sort of the equivalent of the test to see if you're an alcoholic. It
Hmm.
was a test to see if you had bipolar disorder, and it was 20 questions, and I scored a 19 out of 20.
Yes.
And it was a little bit mind blowing. And she said later, she goes, when you came in here, she's like, your pupils were super dilated. You were talking so fast. And so she knew, she clocked it almost immediately. Um, so, we have my shitty sex life to thank for this diagnosis happening because I probably wouldn't have gone to her otherwise.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that diagnosis changed things in a lot of ways, but it didn't completely change things because I was still drinking. And I just was at a point where I didn't feel like I could act anymore. I couldn't do it. I would have so much anxiety before an audition. I wasn't doing good work. And
Did
so
anybody give that feedback to you or you just felt that way?
the feedback I would get from casting people was they would tell my manager, she was good. She was good. We're just going another way. And for me, what that meant was like intellectually, I knew how to act. Intellectually, I knew what good choices were with the material. But internally, emotionally, I just wasn't connecting. And so, like on paper, the work was fine. But in reality, there was something missing. And it was obvious to other people and it was obvious to me. I just didn't know how to get back. Um, and there was even one casting director that told my manager that like she had to rewatch my tape a couple times because my eyes looked crazy. They looked so intense and so crazy. And then after that, I was so worried about my eyes looking crazy that it completely was in my head and like that was it. I was done. I was
Did
out.
your manager tell you, like, come on, why would your manager tell you, yeah, they thought you had crazy eyes?
Oh, not only did she tell me, before every other audition, she would be like, watch out for those crazy eyes. So, yeah,
Oh,
it was a total mind fuck. But ultimately, it was absolutely the right decision for me to stop because I wasn't doing good work anymore, and the up and down of the business is the worst thing for somebody with bipolar disorder. Like what you need when you have bipolar disorder is structure and schedule and having that kind of chaos was just not good for my brain.
Right, right. Okay, so you quit acting, you make like a decision. Do you tell
Hmm.
your manager, like, I'm not doing this anymore?
Yep, told my
You're
manager,
home with your
fired my
kid.
agents. I'm home with my kid. I started a new business and but I just kept drinking. And I think
And tell
it's
us about, so you start your jewelry business,
yeah, I start
Gray
my
by Tamara Mello.
Gray by Tamara Mello.
It's in the
Na-
promo. It's in the beginning, but so that seems like a little bit isolating though, like a good way to start drinking more.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've never thought of it that way. But yeah, I'm by
Home
myself
in
all
your
day.
studio by
Yep,
yourself. Like,
I'm
what's
by
to stop
myself.
you from being like, noon is a good time to I'll just be relaxed and like
Uh-huh.
have a little glass of vino, make
Yeah.
some jewelry.
Yeah. And I never drank while I was working, but I started to end my workday early and earlier because it used to be
11
like,
a.m. You're like, I
yeah,
put in 2 hours.
I'm done. I my husband and I would always like start the evening off with a drink. And it got to the point where like at 4 p.m. I was like, hey, you wanna like sit out back and have a little cocktail? And he was always game. My husband was always super happy to drink with me because we'd hang out and I'd talk about stuff. And he could match me drink for drink, but he didn't have to. Do you know what I mean? I
I know
had
a
to keep,
1,000% what you mean. I have the same husband. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So he would keep drinking with me, but then I would probably keep drinking later than him because I would drink until I was tired enough to just pass out.
Did
Like,
you ever, my thing was like we'd finish a bottle of wine and then by then I have like a nice buzz going. So then my
mm-hmm.
thing was like, well, let's open another bottle of wine. And
Yeah,
my husband would be like, I don't really need more. I'm good. And
yeah,
I'd be cursing him in my head. Like, what do you mean you're good? Like,
yeah.
how do you not want more? Don't you want to keep this feeling going? Like, aren't we having fun? And then I would
Mm-hmm.
either get kind of pouty or I would be like, well, I just want like just like a half a glass of wine. So I'd find a way to open a bottle. And then pretty soon I was pre-gaming before, like,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, let me get my glass on before he
Before he
gets
got home from
home.
work.
So
Yeah.
then I can seem like I'm not wanting so much.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I I for sure did that. And the thing with me was, so my drink of choice was Sauvignon Blanc and and tequila. I would drink them both. Um, but my husband is allergic to white wine, so I always had the whole bottle to myself. And I would do things like there was a particular brand of Sauvignon Blanc that I would get at Trader Joe's, and they wouldn't always have it. So when they did have it, I would make sure I would buy like 6 or 12 bottles at a time.
Of course.
So I always had it. And I would say, "Oh, we're having a party." And just because of course the cashier cares what I'm doing with my wine. So I always had it and it was a convenient screw top. So it wasn't really hard to just pop open another bottle. And there was always one in the fridge. So nobody noticed it because there was always just one in the fridge.
Right, right. Yeah, well, when you have a whole stash
Yeah.
and your husband's not counting the bottles and going like, didn't we have 12 bottles yesterday? Why do we only have 10? Like
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
kind of,
No,
yeah.
no one cared. And I was left to my own devices, but I would also do a thing where I would go like, okay, I'm not going to drink today. But then I would see in the refrigerator, there would be like maybe a quarter of a bottle left of wine. And I'd go, well, I mean, I can't just leave. I should just finish it. I should just finish it. It
You
might
don't
go
want to be
bad.
wasteful.
No, I
Yeah.
don't want to be wasteful. What am I going to do? Use it for cooking? No. So I would drink it. I would go back on the I'm not drinking today to then it would be, well, let me just have this glass of wine. And then I would just keep going. Like there was never a shut off.
Right. So how long did this, I mean, you only got sober a couple years ago, so you must have been functional for a while, or were you struggling with the moderating for a long time?
I struggled with the moderating for a long time, but I was always functional. I was always highly functional. I could do my job, I could take care of my kid, I could volunteer at my kid's school. Like the drinking didn't it didn't really interfere with those things. Although I think I realized once I got sober what the interference was. Um, but also like taking care of a small child, and my husband worked crazy hours kind of far away from our home. So it was mostly just me by myself with my kid. And those hours can be so mind numbing. And I didn't drink when I was alone with my son, but as soon as my husband got home, that's when I would start. And it was just like, it just started as like, I just need to decompress. I just need to do something for myself. Um, but it doesn't stay that way. It just keeps going and gets progressively worse. Um,
It's amazing for moms, I think especially if you're a stay-at-home mom, even when your husband comes home, it's really difficult to just like go to the gym. It's a whole different side of your brain. It's like we
yeah.
want to do these, we hear all about this, hashtag self-care, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not as easy as just like, you really have to take care of yourself. You need to meditate and you should do this and you should do healthier things. It's so much easier to go, okay, now I'm going to get some time to myself. I'm just going to go in my room. I'm going to play some games on my phone and I'm going to have a drink.
Yeah.
And who's going to not support you in that?
Yeah. No, that is self-care. That is
Right, right.
clearly recognizable as self-care to us.
To us, yeah. I'm gonna watch TV and have some drinks and like
Yeah.
leave me alone. Like I've been with the baby all day.
Yeah. Like this is my me time. And
Yeah.
the thing is I would still go to yoga every day.
Oh, okay.
I would still do hot yoga every day, but there were definitely days when my balance was a little worse than it was on other days. And I think what I realized once I got sober and I looked back on all of these ways that I thought I was highly functioning, I would plan things like if somebody said, "Oh, do you want to do a hike Saturday morning or go to breakfast Saturday morning?" I would always push it off to the afternoon because I knew I would be hungover on Saturday morning. And it's funny now when people ask me to do stuff like early on weekends, my first thing is to go, no, we'll do it later. And then I remember, like, oh, I'm not going to be hungover. I'm going to wake up at 7 and feel great. And I also realized like it frees up so much time. Like I got sober and I went back to school. And I'm like finally getting that degree that I should have gotten when I was 20. You just all of a sudden have all this extra time and you feel good and you have those feeling good hours that you can fill with stuff that is positive and not like isolating in your room, drinking and being on your phone.
Right, for sure. So you you're trying to moderate for a while. You're starting to have, because it seems kind of sudden the way you quit drinking. Was it
Yeah.
building up at that point? You were trying to stop, and then you were like, after the point that you're like, okay, I'm not going to drink today, but then you're like, well, there's a little bit of wine left, so I'm going to have that. Is it building up in you that you're like, oh, I really wish I could quit drinking, but it's hard?
Yeah, I think I always did wish I could keep drinking or to see to stop drinking. Um, but it was just really, really hard. And I remember hearing somebody say once, like, if you think that you're an alcoholic, like I can't tell you if you are, if you aren't, but what I can tell you is that people who aren't alcoholics don't usually ask themselves that question. And I think hearing that made me sort of realize, all right, I've got to start thinking about this. But I thought about it for years. I just kept drinking, but I knew it was a problem. I
Right.
100% knew it was a problem. I just didn't really, the idea of stopping was so foreign to me. And I would think like, well, I don't want to hang out with sober people. Who's going to want to hang out with me? And what am I going to do when I go on vacation? And what am I going to do when I go out to dinner? Like, I would choose restaurants based on whether or not they sold alcohol. So, like, if we had plans to go to a restaurant, I would look up and make sure that that I could get a glass of wine with dinner. And if they didn't, I would find reasons not to go to that restaurant.
Of course. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But so you make this decision one, and you're like, I don't, you wake up, you feel shitty about yourself, and you're like, I'm not going to drink anymore. And then what?
So I don't know that I absolutely made that decision of I'm not going to drink anymore. I think I made the decision of let me get to the bottom of this a little bit and see if I can figure out how to moderate.
Okay.
So, and for me, because I because my mom had spent and has spent so much time in AA, I always just sort of felt like it wasn't for me, which is kind of silly because like I went to Al-Anon meetings and loved them and thought that they were amazing,
Hmm.
but it always felt like AA wasn't for me. And I think part of that is I was just afraid of revealing myself. So I read This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and then I did her 30-day alcohol experiment, which is basically it's you commit to like journaling and reading or listening to something every day for 30 days. And her thing is like, I'm not going to tell you to stop drinking. I'm just going to ask you to do this experiment for 30 days and then see how you feel. And so I did it and I felt great. And then that's when I made the decision to stop drinking completely. And once I made that decision, everything freed up. It was so much easier when I just took alcohol out of the equation. I didn't have to think anymore about when I could drink, how I would drink when I started again, how would I drink again without getting wasted. There was such a freedom in that decision, and it changed my life.
It's so amazing. I was so scared to quit drinking myself. I mean, I'd been trying half-heartedly and then talking myself back into it. And then, yeah, I had that moment of desperation of just like, I just can't, I'm not safe drinking. And
Mm-hmm.
once I had that real moment of, I don't want to do this. I'm not good with it.
Mm-hmm.
I hate being unpredictable because
Mm-hmm.
my thing was always, lots of times I could have a couple of glasses of wine. It didn't always lead to 10 glasses of wine.
Yes.
Lots of times I drank 2 glasses of wine. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
then I'd go to a party and I'd have 5 glasses. I'd lose track. I don't know how many
Mm-hmm.
glasses I'd have, and I'd be drunk and do something embarrassing, or I'd
Mm-hmm.
feel embarrassed,
Yeah.
and wake up and not quite remember everything.
Well,
So
how did the people in your life respond when did you make an announcement of
I
like,
did. I remember telling this neighbor of mine, and she reminds me of it sometimes because she always comments. We rarely talk anymore, but because she moved away many years ago, but our
mm-hmm,
kids were friends. And I
mm-hmm,
do remember kind of announcing to her because we drank together all the time.
yeah,
Neighbor and kid the exact same age. And I went over to her house. Yeah, because Elby would have been, my older one would have been like, was 4.5 when I quit drinking. So that's around the time, preschool age was when
yeah,
I quit. The twins were 18 months old and Elby was 4. And I
wow,
remember saying to her, like, yeah, I quit drinking. And I remember her being like, wait, what? Like,
mm-hmm,
why? And I was
mm-hmm,
like, I remember not really telling people the truth about why I quit drinking. I didn't say like, well, I drove really drunk with my kids in the
mm-hmm,
car. That was humiliating. So I was just like, I just decided that I drink too much and I have to stop. And
yeah,
most of the people I told, like I had a big wider group of mom friends that really didn't drink that much anyway. Everybody was shocked.
yeah,
I didn't I didn't get drunk around people that often. It wasn't like I hung out with a party group for me
mm-hmm,
personally.
mm-hmm,
My friends who had been like comedians, I hadn't really hung out with them in years.
uh-huh,
But my husband, I think, was scared that he was going to lose like his drinking, but like his drinking
yeah,
buddy, that I wasn't going to be fun anymore and that I was going to
same,
be like super serious and like going to cult meetings, and
yeah,
he was worried, and he is always of the mind that I'm being too hard on myself. So his thing
mm-hmm,
was like, I don't think you're an alcoholic. Like,
Same.
let's not be crazy. We don't have to be so
Mm-hmm.
black and white. And I was like, you don't, I don't think you understand. Like, I can't have a little
Mm-hmm.
because I want to have a lot.
Right. Well, and I think what other people don't understand is how much you're thinking about alcohol all the time. You're
Yes.
thinking about when you can get it again. You're thinking about, oh no, I only have a glass left of wine and there's no more in the house. Like, you don't talk about that stuff with other people. So,
I know a woman who, well, she wrote this in a book. So I don't, it's a it wasn't a memoir,
mhm,
but I remember reading her book about a woman who's an alcoholic and she has a
mhm,
5-year-old daughter and she
mhm,
runs out of wine and her kid's sleeping and she makes the decision like to go to the store and get more
mhm.
wine
Yeah,
and nothing really happens, but she realizes, oh my God, like wine has become more important than like the safe, like who leaves a 5-year-old alone
yeah,
in a house, even though in her mind at the time she was like, but she's asleep, so she's fine. But
uh-huh.
and I remember thinking like I could totally understand that logic.
Yeah, yeah.
Of like,
I
well, she's asleep and I really need some wine.
Nothing's
She'll,
gonna happen. The
right,
door's locked. She can't get out of her crib. It's fine.
right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah. I did have those moments. I don't think I had them about alcohol, but I had them very clearly when my son was a baby because you're trapped in the house and I would go, "Well, I can just run to the grocery store really quick and pick up this thing. He's not going anywhere."
Right.
And I never did it, but I totally understand the logic.
Right. But that thinking is so fucked up because you would never, if you weren't drinking, like if you were
Mm-hmm.
sober, you'd never be like, well, I really need some grapes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave my kid alone in the house and go get them.
Yeah. No, it would
Right.
it wouldn't happen. And I think that people who don't struggle with alcohol, they don't understand the power of it in your brain and how it changes your thinking. And like, so, obviously when you're drunk, you make stupid decisions. But when you have a problem with alcohol, you make stupid decisions when you're sober too.
Right. That's very true. So, okay. So you decide to, after the 30 days, you're like, I'm not
Mhm.
going to drink anymore. But now you don't have any sober friends. So what was it like for you when you told your friends?
Yeah, I didn't tell everybody at first. At first, I was just like, oh, I'm doing dry January. Um, and
But it was like July.
yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I know it was January.
Um, but eventually I told people, and it's interesting because my two best friends, they were very supportive and they had questions. And and now one of them is actually sober. She, said to me, like, you inspired me and I'm gonna try it. And she sort of did the same thing, like, let me try it for a month, let me try it for 2 months. And now she hasn't had a drink in over 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for
But
her. She knows who she is.
yeah, exactly. You know who you are. Um, but the rest of my friends kind of just didn't ask. Like I told them, like I've quit drinking, and nobody really inquired. So I don't know if it was because they were all like, thank God she stopped drinking. She's a fucking nightmare.
Uh-huh.
Or if I don't know, it just didn't matter to them that much. But I had the speech prepared. I had the things prepared that I was going to say, but no one really asked. I think it's just now more annoying to people than anything else because when we go to a big dinner and the bill is over $1,000 because everyone's been ordering cocktails, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I'm not paying as much as everyone else. I'm not splitting the bill with you guys. I've been drinking soda water. So
Uh-huh.
I think it's just more of an irritant than anything else. Like I'm not fun anymore. And like I realize when I'm around a group of people and people are getting progressively more drunk, I have to tap out. Like when the volume goes up and I realize I can't get a word in edgewise unless I yell, I'm like, this isn't fun for me anymore. And it used to be really, really fun.
Oh, I completely relate to that. The thing is though that I am definitely more fun sober and I think people are missing out that when I
Same.
got sober and people stopped inviting me to certain things,
Yeah.
I was left out of this is in my book, but I was left out of a margarita night with the
Mm-hmm.
moms
Right.
because I don't drink. So they were worried I was going to be uncomfortable. And I was like, no, you're worried you're going to be uncomfortable because you
Exactly.
guys want to get your drink on and you don't need some sober ass girl like, giving you dirty looks. But what they don't realize is compared to how I was when I was drinking, I'm more present. I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm more fun to be around. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a better listener. I'm not the drunk one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the same, but I think also what happens is like you said, I think people are afraid that because you're sober, you're going to judge them for their drinking. And I know that my journey was very like specific to me, and I was really more afraid of people judging me for my drinking than judging me for my sobriety. Um, but again, like you're one of my very few sober friends, so being with my friends that still drink, I'm still happy to be with them. I still love them very much, but there's just a different dynamic.
Yeah, I think I'm much less tolerant of too much small talk. It's
Hmm.
it's easier to make friends when you have deeper stuff in common because you can kind of cut through the bullshit and get to know each
Hmm.
other. Like, let's share our trauma. Let's talk
Yeah.
about like real stuff,
Yeah.
as opposed to, I don't know, I don't have as much in common with I don't have as much tolerance for not having stuff in common with people,
Right.
which is not to
Yeah.
say that I won't be around them or I won't be friendly. And of course,
Hmm.
it's just to say that for the people that I choose to spend time with, even
Hmm.
to like go to lunch, go to dinner, like hang out, it's like I want to be able to have real conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, connecting on a deeper level like that is obviously super important. But I think too, the benefit of working a program the way that you do is that you have a community, and that, you share your secrets, you share your trauma. And like I hate the phrase trauma bond, but there is that, like, you've got this deep sense of community, and I didn't get that because I did this all by myself.
Right.
So I feel like I'm missing out on having like that supportive community around me.
I'm going to bring you into the fold and you're going to
Okay.
see. I feel like people think, I mean, I hate, like, I've really wanted to make this podcast not, this is how you do it. Or, I mean, you did it through reading that book and doing that program and
Mhm.
that helped you get started. And then I feel like there are a lot of ways to get community. You can
Mhm.
just hang out with meet more sober people. You can find it online. There's a lot of ways, but I do think that like for me, it was kind of the easier way, like you said,
Mhm.
because it was built in people that get you. And there was that
Mhm.
feeling of like, oh, I'm not the only one. But at the same time, I do understand people's suspicion about
Mhm.
AA and what it's going to be like. And oh my God, am I going to be in a cult? And is it going to be so all or nothing and so intense? And, I find that you have to find the right meetings for you and you have to find the right groups where you don't feel like, oh, now I need to be going to meetings every single day and I have to do it this way and I have to do this writing and I have to, I don't like anything that's super intense like that. And I do
Mhm.
tend to be like, okay, I'm going to take that suggestion and I'm going to not take that suggestion and I'm going to
Mhm.
make it my own way.
Right.
There is room for that, is what I'm saying. For
Yeah.
anybody out there who's thinking like, well, I don't want to enter any kind of 12-step program because it's going to be crazy and religious and all the things.
Mhm.
It's not. It's really not. I mean, there
Yeah.
are, of course, there's people and doing there. Of course, there's people like that.
Right.
You have to just run
Well,
away from those people.
yeah, it's definitely fear that keeps me from going. It's fear of revealing myself. It's fear of judgment. It's fear of all these things. And it's crazy because I've seen how beneficial it's been for my mom. Um, it may just be a childish rebellion on my part, but like I said, I've gone to Al-Anon meetings. I've gone to virtual Al-Anon meetings, and I got so much from them. There was a time like during the pandemic, I would go to two or three a day. And I would mostly just listen. I didn't really participate, but I listened, and it was so incredible for me. It was so healing for me that it seems like a no-brainer for me to go to an AA meeting, but I haven't.
You just need a good one. I'll take you
Yeah.
to a good one. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I keep threatening
Yeah, I'll
that
do
I'm going to
it.
do
I'm
that.
ready. I'm ready.
Okay. Well, it's funny that you're scared of doing that, but yet you came on my podcast and you fully revealed, and you came on For Crying Out Loud before and revealed yourself there. It was so nice talking to you on this
You
level.
too, always.
And this is going to help people. You have to know that. So
I hope
tell us,
so.
promote your business. Tell everybody where to buy your jewelry.
Um,
Jewelry.
so I have a website. It's called Gray with an E by Tamara Mello. And yeah, you can find me there. You can follow me on Instagram at Tamara Mello. That's it. I don't have a podcast to promote. I don't have a television show to promote. I just wanted to come on here and talk to you, and you know, hopefully if one person listening is like, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to think about that," then that's great.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tamara. And we'll talk to everybody next week. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Got me feeling like life is good, life